Hello students, welcome back to the Analyst for 29th January 2025, where we'll be looking at 7 most important articles from the Indian Express and the Hindu, where we'll be looking into firstly the analysis sections. In the first one, we'll be looking at DeepSeek and the implications about the same on the artificial intelligence development around the world and especially on India. In the second one, we'll be looking about the various basic aspects and concepts of our union budget, where we'll be discussing about the components and also regarding the various fiscal policy rules. In the next part of the discussion, we'll be looking at 5 more articles from a simplified perspective, which are extremely crucial for the upcoming prelims 2025 examination. So stay tuned. So guys, whether you like or not, China is everywhere, and this is what has happened with the recent inauguration or say the launch of DeepSeek AI chatbot. And this is how we have to understand China is taking almost each and every section of our world, be it the military aspect, be it the political aspect, be it science and technological development. China is almost at equal length with the Western nations, mainly the United States. So recently, the DeepSeek has shaken up the US Silicon Valley. It has also shaken and also negatively impacted the global stock markets, along with the implication it is holding for the rest of the world. So in this article, we'll be looking into what are the various observations regarding the recent success of DeepSeek. We'll be also looking into what we can learn from China, and also the way forward. So this is a very important article when it comes to our prelims, when we talk about general science. Also, when we talk about GS2, we need to look into what are the various policies that developed and the developing countries of the world are taking, for example, in this case, China, and how that is impacting our own India's interest. Also, we need to be aware of the various happenings and the developments in the fields of IT, computers, within which we have artificial intelligence too. We need to also be aware of the various terms in the news, which I will be showing you, which can be extremely crucial for the prelims 25 examination. So here, firstly, let me begin with this meme. As you can see here, we have ChatGPT, here we have Google Gemini or Meta, where we have seen over a period of time since December 2022, we have seen how the artificial intelligence sector was progressively developing with the advent of ChatGPT. And since then, we have seen so many investments from Google, from Meta, as to where we have seen this scenario when these big giants, these big tech companies were fighting between themselves. But right now, see what has happened with the introduction of China. Everyone else is running away. Why? Because this is something significant which has happened, which we have to understand here. When we talk about DeepSeek, it is actually the brainchild of Liang Wenfeng, who is a Chinese billionaire, who is actually the owner of a hedge fund. Right now, these hedge fund billionaires, they invest their money in so many other sectors. Now, what he did, he tried to invest, or he tried to look into the potential of the AI sector starting in 2019, when he looked into how various investments in AI can be undertaken, and also after the sanctions imposed by the US in 2022, he was also interested how we can optimally develop AI with minimal costs. So this is how the brainchild was actually brought into the picture. And also, we have to keep in mind, this DeepSeek is actually a startup company based in Yangzhou, which is actually China's Silicon Valley. And here, this model is open source model. That means any second party, third party, any other stakeholder can contribute to this model. That means this is not a closed model. If you want to contribute, or if you want to take some benefits out of this model, you can do so. It is to be noted that even ChatGPT, even Gemini is, are actually sources of open source AI models. So in computer technology field, it is always beneficial to have open source models to have more updations over a period of time. And also, when we talk about his own model, it was based on an extremely low cost one, where approximately $5 to $6 million was the total cost estimate of this project. And also, when we talk about the AI plans on this DeepSeek website, if you can go and see, it is 90 to 95% more affordable than what the other companies are offering. For example, the ChatGPT, Gemini, so they have their own premium plans, right? So that is they have brought down the cost of subscriptions too. Now this is a very significant thing. Why? Because generally it was held that the development of AI and the AI sectors was only possible with the use of heavy computing powers. Now I won't be going into depths of what artificial intelligence is all about, or say what it is driven by, because we have discussed this in great detail in the previous sessions. But I just wanted to let you know that AI is that sector which is extremely power hungry. That means whatever the prompts we are feeding into the AI systems, or say the AI chatbots, don't think that it is a very simple task, right? The AI models are continuously being trained on numerous data running into billions and billions of parameters of, say, various technological or say technical aspects, which is actually helping us to get that important information out of the system. So it requires a lot of computing power. Generally that is possible by usage of high performing graphical processing units, which was actually the monopoly of a company named as Nvidia, right, which is a US based company. After the success of DeepSeek, the stocks of Nvidia went down. Why? Because let me tell you something, that in 2022, when the AI sector was progressing at a breakneck speed, Joe Biden imposed a lot of sanctions and restrictions on the export of the GPUs from the US. Essentially, it was aimed at decreasing the AI development in China and also the rest of the competitor nations of the US. So, despite that, what DeepSeek did is they procured a lot of cheaper varieties of GPUs. They procured the H800 GPUs, which are significantly lesser, say, powerful than the contemporary or say the present GPUs which we're using in ChatGPT or in OpenAI and in various other big tech companies. So firstly, DeepSeek has made it possible to even generate a powerful, say, AI system than the ChatGPT or say the various other ones with weaker GPUs. Also, they have used low-level coding systems which will be enhancing the memory usage. They optimize the entire code applications by actually hiring the best of the talents from China's public universities, from China's own other startups, from other big companies, and this company also offered higher salaries than what we actually see even at big tech companies in the US. So this is how China also optimized on this, and they delivered this within the 1/10 computing power of even Meta's Llama model, right? And also we have to understand that this particular model of DeepSeek is costing around $6 million, which is against $100 million which was invested to develop just the GPT-4 or ChatGPT-4, right? So this is what we have to keep in mind when we talk about how optimally they use the resources. Also, when we talk about the chips used, right, they used, the ChatGPT and the various other big tech companies, they use better chips, they have higher employees, the development years that also took several years, they actually invested more than $100 million. Also, when we talk about the app stores and the cost of, say, subscription, that is much more higher than what we look at DeepSeek. So when we look at this data, we see that DeepSeek is ahead in almost all of the aspects, right? Also, when we talk about some terms in the news which can be extremely crucial for the prelims examination, so keep these things in mind, that multi-head latent attention and auxiliary loss-free load balancing, these terms refer to the training process of various data which are fed into the AI systems. So when we talk about this, we understand how China tried to optimize this by bringing in their own innovation. So whenever we talk about these terms, this means that how we are training that AI data in this system. So here we have to also keep in mind as to what the immediate observations are from the rest of the world. Firstly, look at this joke that this particular person is not even believing that ChatGPT has lost its own job. It is always said that AI is going to lead to the job losses of normal human beings. It is for the very first time that ChatGPT is losing its job against DeepSeek, right? So this is how firstly we have to keep in mind that this is a significant thing which has actually shaken the Western confidence, right? And also we have to talk about the recent stock market crash which happened across the Western markets. So we have seen that $1 trillion worth of stock value has been wiped off from the US markets, and this is an extremely big event which has taken place, right? Because we have to understand the stock markets always work on something which we know as investor sentiments. And the investor sentiment has recently seen that China is not only has developed its own AI model, that is fine, any country can do that. Well, it is an incredible feat in itself, but China has done that not using the advanced chips. It has used lesser valued chips, and hence it has also lowered cost of development. Also, when we have to talk about the foundational model, it has the ability to train all those AI data using the limited number of chips that it actually got. Also, investors are aware that the 2022 restrictions on China on the various import restrictions with reference to the various GPUs. So despite that, China achieved this feat, correct? Also, this particular development has made the American AI sector look smaller with reference to various big tech companies where they are investing millions and billions of, say, dollars in their own development, where even Sam Altman has praised this development that it was possible within a low cost parameter. So these things are making the American AI sector look much more minuscule when it comes to China. And if it is coming from a startup which just started its main operations almost 2-3 years back, and the AI development 2-3 months ago, so maybe over a period of time, big companies from China such as ByteDance, such as Tencent, such as various other companies, they can come up with their own models. And it is also reported that Tencent, ByteDance, their values on stock markets, particularly on Taiwan stock market, the values are increasing. So many investors from the US, from the West, are also increasingly flocking to China, Taiwan, to invest in the markets there, right? So these are the things we have to keep in mind. And also, in the words of C. Raja Mohan, this is the Sputnik moment for China. We have to keep in mind that when we were at the height of the Cold War in 1950s, Russia tried to go further by launching the world's first satellite. And after seeing this, after looking at the development or say the achievement of Russia, USA also tried to launch a mission that would land the very first man on the moon. You let me know in the comments who he was. So also, when we have to relate this thing with China, we have to understand while US, the Western countries were already ahead in the AI race, China right now popped in, and it popped in with a better AI model, which is leading, in values, in performance, in every other thing, even in price and costs. And also, this is giving a hope for countries such as India and also middle powers such as France, Japan, and so on, with a hope that, okay, if we do not have the resources, we can actually try to develop our own model. And it is to be kept in mind that this particular thing is having lessons for countries like India and the other countries. And here, firstly, we have to look into what are the gaps we have left open when we talk about developing our own AI model. India has been talking about developing our own model. The various Indian founders, the various Indian CEOs, and also various eminent business people such as even Narayana Murthy. So they have talked about how India can have their own AI models. But we have to understand the government of India has taken a very important initiative in this matter. That is the India AI mission, where the total cost is around 10,372 crores. If I can translate that into dollar value, it will be around $1.2 billion, and it will be obviously in excess of that value. But how much this China actually invested? Right, it invested only around $6 million. So we can understand that while we have the monetary resources, we have already dedicated for the setting up of a marketplace, procurement of around 10,000 GPUs, also developing AI centers for developing our own large language models, also a platform for AI datasets wherein the various startups in the country, they can train their own data generated using this particular mission. So apart from this, we have so many initiatives. So where are the gaps? The gaps are actually in the implementation of the mission. Maybe the rigor and the vigor which China had, we have been lacking that in our mission. Also, we have to focus on creating our own models rather than relying on open source models such as ChatGPT or say Google or say any other aspect. China did not borrow any aspects from them. or say the big tech companies. So it is high time for us right now to create our own models, right? It will be, for example, for the entire world to show that we did not emulate some other countries' models or some other company's model where we have to depend on their own coding, on their own sources. So this is what we should do right now. Also, this particular development from China is offering a beautiful opportunity for Indian startups. Let me tell you, there are many startups in the country which are actually dedicating their time, resources, man-force into developing large language models and also small language models with their own resources. So this will be promoting them, mainly giving them a psychological boost, a morale boost for developing their own opportunities in this particular domain. And here, this is also looking into how we can aspire for better skill development. Let me remind you that Chinese startups such as DeepSeek has actually looked at universities, research institutions, R&D institutions, and various private companies based in China. They have hired workers from there and they have tried to upskill their present amount of capabilities. So this is what we should be also try to do over a period of time. We have to integrate these courses, these designs in our national education policy 2020, and going forward we must be having increased amount of industry tie-ups between the various schools, universities and research institutions, which will be giving us a diverse amount of pool of workers for the sector. And at the end of the day, we need better amount of government support. We need better amount of government collaboration with the private sector too. So this is how we have to keep in mind this particular development. But yeah, when we talk about DeepSeek, there are various amounts of concerns. As we can understand, this is a Chinese activity. So developments regarding this mission will not be free from the Chinese state. That means that, for example, there was one user, I found the particular thing on the social media that according to various responses, according to various questions related to China, the AI model of DeepSeek is giving replies regarding that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. Any allegations of human rights abuses are unfounded, which are taking place in China, right? Also, the Chinese government manages internet content in accordance with the law. So with reference to anything related to China, the AI model does not respond with truth or with facts. So we can understand that it has a biasness, right? And this is actually because China, the state, the polity, the structure of Chinese state is actually something which is not separated from the companies also. That means the private companies in China are not immune from the policies there. And here we have to understand the China factor is a very important thing with reference to the accurateness, the biasness of the data. Also, when we talk about the recent website of DeepSeek, which I also went in the morning, right? You can also try it on your own. Whenever I'm going to log in, I see that at the very top of the website that it has been written in bold words that we have been subjected to various large-scale cyber attacks, even amounting to ransomware and malware cases. So based on the various users, they're getting these threats from various cyber attacks on their website. Also, when we talk about the privacy and the personal data issues, we have to understand this is China we are talking about, and China doesn't love privacy. They doesn't want any personal data. Every data I believe is actually the state data. So whenever we are using our own email ID to log in, we are giving our email ID, you are actually giving your date of birth, your place of location, even your internet protocol address, your research questions or whatever the questions you're giving, even your voice samples, video samples, everything is getting fed into the training data. And that is what is actually making this particularly very, very concerning. Also, when we talk about the past Chinese apps, which were also banned in India in 2020-21, even later, it was also recently, as we can understand, there are various restrictions with reference to TikTok in the US. So the past activities, the past Chinese apps do not reflect a good picture. And when we talk about national security, obviously if we take into all of the points above, so national security can also be compromised. So herein we have to look into a particular way forward. Firstly, we can develop a sovereign AI model where the various aspects of the AI are regulated by the government sector. And it is extremely important because we cannot allow the various private companies to have their own rules and policies regarding the development of AI in various countries. Also, the US can choose the partnership model with countries, like-minded countries such as India and the rest of the world, to further their AI development. Also, when we talk about Sputnik, we have to also remember the detente years of 1970s, when despite the Cold War, in the 1970s the US and Russia came together for the overall cooperation and development in various sectors. So it is also giving us an hint, a lesson, that US and China should also collaborate on this particular matter so that the entire benefit can be accrued not only to two nations but also to the entire globe. Also, there must be creation of a set of rules when we talk about a moratorium that should be held at AI levels, or say a temporary halt on the development activities with reference to AI, which is very important because the rapid speed of AI development can lead to job losses, temporal various disruptions in the economy too. So that is why we must be having a set of rules such as the EU rules on AI. Even in India we are talking about a particular act, we can have in accordance with the EU provisions too. And finally, when we talk about imperatives for India, we have so many government schemes for AI development. We should be continuing with those schemes. At the same time, the government should be also laying effort on upskilling the people here, right, with reference to various educational initiatives. The government should also bring in research and development collaboration with the rest of the world, particularly with reference to various partnership models that it can adopt with some countries, right? And also, when we talk about the other imperatives, India must be trying to implement the existing government schemes, particularly the $1.2 billion India AI mission. It should be able to implement it. And also, we must be learning from China, which has developed it at further low cost and also at a very optimal subscription plan. So this is something which even ISRO does. ISRO also manufactures satellites, it also launches satellites, right? And this is how we can also develop the AI sector in India using our own ISRO model. So in this one, there is a mains practice question for you all, and also a 2020 PYQ, for which you let me know what is the answer in the comments below. But now we'll be moving on to the next article. Now students, we have a very basic article here which will be extremely important for the upcoming prelims 2025 examination and also for the further understanding of the Union Budget of 2025, which is due to be launched on 1st February 2025. So this is extremely important for prelims, where we have the topics of economic and social development, also for GS3 mains, where we have the topics of government budgeting. So this is an article which is explaining us various simple concepts of the union budget. Also, when we look at various mains PYQs over 2021, 2018 and 17, so we find that the questions in mains are extremely basic and they generally pertain to current affairs and also your static. So you look at these questions very closely. In these questions, you will find that UPSC is trying to balance your static concepts with the changes which is happening in your current affairs. Now, in the very beginning, I'll be starting with extremely key and very basic facts regarding the union budget. Now, the union budget or the term budget is not mentioned ever in the Constitution of India. What is mentioned is actually the term known as annual financial statement, as you can see in Article 112, right, where it is said, the President shall, in respect of every financial year, cause to be laid before both of the houses of the Parliament a statement of the estimated receipts and expenditure of Government of India for that year. And we have to refer to this as the annual financial statement. It also refers to what the various expenditures that the Constitution should be meeting, or say the country should be meeting via the consolidated fund of India too. Now here we have to understand the very first budget in India was passed by was actually during the pre-independent time in 1860 by James Wilson. And when we talk about the first union budget of independent India, this was presented by R.K. Shanmugam Chetty, and the first budget of Republic of India was presented by John Mathai. Now in the comment section, can anyone tell me what is the difference between independent India and Republic of India? Now let me test how well you all are revising your polity and also history, that is modern history. Now in the budget we have various key documents. Firstly, we have the annual financial statement according to Article 112. We also have the various demand for grants according to Article 113, extremely important for the prelims examination. Also, it is important to note that the finance bill is also part of the documents. When we talk about the various provisions of the FRBM Act, some of the aspects we'll be seeing later also. According to this, we need to present various fiscal policy statements to assure fiscal prudence or ensuring the standards in which we have to spend the public money in a very judicious manner, for which we have to present the macroeconomic framework statement, medium-term fiscal policy strategy statement. So please do keep these terms in your mind, right? Also, when we talk about firstly the very basic components, here budget is generally divided into receipt and expenditure components. When we talk about receipt and expenditure component, firstly we have to be revised of something which we know as assets and liability. Now consider, for example, an investment by the government of India to build a particular bridge over a town. Now this bridge is something which the government or say the private sector or people like us will be using for years and years and years. Now alongside the bridge we can also develop an airport, we can develop a road, right? We can do so many activities just because we have a bridge which is enhancing the connectivity between the nearby town, villages and so on. So in this aspect, do you think that the bridge is an asset or a liability? So in this case, the bridge is an asset for the government of India. When we talk about any loan taken by the government for funding Manrega or say any other government scheme, the government is taking loan or money from any other bank or institution, or sometimes in the case even from international institutions. So in this case, it is actually creating a liability on the part of the government. So based on the various expenditures the government is doing, right? So government can sometimes create no asset, no liability, right? Which is actually seen in the case of revenue components. Sometimes the government can actually increase assets or decrease assets, increase liabilities or decreasing liabilities. So that is actually looking into the capital side. So always remember this thing, whenever we are talking about revenue receipt or revenue expenditure, we are talking nothing about either assets or liabilities. When we talk about capital receipt or capital expenditure, we are talking about those expenditures which are changing our assets and liabilities. When we talk about the revenue receipt, that is divided into two parts, tax and non-tax. Within the tax we have direct and indirect taxes. Within non-tax we have commercial revenue, administrative revenue, dividend and profit. Now note that these things are not creating any assets nor liabilities. Now when we talk about say the capital receipt, generally we have this in two types: debt creating receipts and non-debt creating receipts. It is very well understood from the very term itself. Debt creating this means that it is increasing our liabilities, right? For example, so the various loans and borrowings that we do from the market, they increase our debt. So that means that the money that we receive from loans, that is actually a part of debt creating capital receipt. Some receipts, for example, say disinvestments or the various other receipts, they do not create any debt, right? But they can change the assets and liabilities aspect here. So this is how we can understand that this is actually the non-debt creating say capital receipts. When we talk about the expenditure side, the same on the other side we have the revenue expenditure, which are actually the money that the government is spending on day-to-day government functioning, such as paying salaries, paying interest payments. Please do note that interest payments do not fall under capital expenditure, neither capital receipts, because this is a routine payment that the government has to make with reference to various loans the government has taken over a period of time. Also, when we talk about maintaining the role of a contingency fund, defense, subsidies, right? So these are all the aspects of say the revenue expenditure which are not creating any asset or liabilities. Now, according to a recent classification, the grants to states or union territories which finally create some assets. For example, if there is a grant to repair a school building, to repair a road, don't you think that is indirectly creating some assets? So in this one, we have something which we know as effective revenue deficit, in which we do not treat this as revenue expenditure, right? So for this purpose, we are treating, for the calculation of effective revenue deficit, we actually take into the matter those grants which are capital or say asset creating in nature. And when we look at the capital expenditure part, we also have the capital expenditure to build various airports, roads, schools, right? We give sometimes loans to state governments, also the loans to various UTs, foreign governments also, and also sometimes when we repay our loans, we decrease our liabilities. So these are the various capital expenditure that the government does. Apart from this classification based on assets and liabilities, we also have classification with reference to expenditure based on sectors of the government. Generally, we have the general sector, economic sector, social sector, and grants in aid and contribution. Whether we try to combine the economic services and the social services as a part of developmental expenditure. The economic services generally pertain to the money that the government is spending on transportation, on agriculture, on industries, right? And also when we talk about the social services, this is the money that the government is spending on welfare functions. So these are the two components of the budget, right? That is receipt and the expenditure components. Generally in this article, it is also talking about the third component, which are actually the deficit indicators. Now here we have also fiscal deficit. Only for revision purposes, we have to understand that this is the difference between total expenditure minus revenue receipts minus non-debt receipts, because we have to not account for those debt receipts which we have taken to actually meet our excess expenditures. So that part we have to deduct. Also when we talk about the primary deficit, this is actually the fiscal deficit here minus the interest payments or interest liabilities that we have based on the previous years, because we should not be reflecting the previous year's interest payments, right? And also when we talk about the revenue deficit, this is simply the fiscal deficit minus capital expenditure. Also we have looked at effective revenue deficit. So effective revenue deficit is actually revenue deficit minus those grants that we have given for various capital assets creation, right? So this is what we have to keep in mind. Also when we talk about the various implications of the union budget, also the budget on our Indian economy, which we'll be seeing on the 1st February. So what it is all about? So it is actually boosting the aggregate demand. We know that we have the formula of the GDP according to expenditure method is that it is C plus I plus G plus X minus M, where C is equal to consumption, investment, government expenditure, and the total trade. So when we talk about the government expenditure, simply if the government expenditure increases, when we have more government spending on various activities such as welfare schemes, investment, infrastructure, we have higher GDP of our country over a period of time. When we talk about, say, what are the implications if the taxes increase? So whenever we have higher amount of taxes, people will be spending less of their income on various goods and services. So that is, we understand that if taxes increase, actually the final amount of disposable income with the people that decrease, and that leads to lesser amount of aggregate demand in the future. So increasing taxes, higher taxes are never good say indicators for any emerging economy. Now when we talk about the deficit impact, we have to understand that lower fiscal deficit or debt to GDP ratio means that we have lesser liabilities to pay and we have more amount of money for spending on infrastructure and so on, right? So this means that lower fiscal deficit is actually linked with a healthy amount of resources that the government is having. But it is not always meaning that if we have a higher fiscal deficit, that means it is bad for the nation. Definitely too much fiscal deficit or too much debt is bad, but a little bit of fiscal deficit is always good, because we need, as a developing country, more money and more resources to invest in various sectors. So that is why we have to keep in mind that higher deficit may boost GDP, but it is also raising over a period of time borrowing cost of the nations, where I told you a little bit of fiscal deficit is good, because we have to keep in mind the infrastructure creation. We have to also stimulate the economy by infusing various funds into infrastructure sectors and so on. We have to also lead to various job creation avenues, because sometimes even a small activity such as construction of a road or a highway alongside a village, that can actually try to crowd in various private investments. So, and also finally, social welfare programs are important. That means a higher fiscal deficit can improve GDP, right? And that should be within a healthy amount, that is within 2 to 3% of the GDP. That is quite fine. But higher than that will be having negative consequences based on higher interest payments for the subsequent generations, where we can have, where we have to understand that 20, 30 years later, the future generations have to pay our own debts. Also, when we talk about the various inflationary pressure, that means whenever government is taking high amount of borrowings, it is increasing the money supply within the nation, right? Which means that more money is with the people. People is spending with the various goods, with laptops, smartphones, and so on. Higher inflation will be generated in this manner. When we talk about crowding out, that means that government is taking most of the loans from the banking sectors, leaving very little loans for the rest of the consumers in the economy, for people like you or me who will not be able to take loans for house loans, setting up business, or simply borrowing an iPhone, because the government has taken all the money. So the banks do not have any money to lend us. This is a case of crowding out. Also, our credit rating as a country, they will be going down. That is, later on, if we require a loan for any other assistance purposes, we will not be able to take those things. So this is how we have to understand that the implications of the budget and the various aspects are extremely important. Well, one of the most important things that budget also does is actually income distribution. That is why the various government schemes and policies, it is actually trying to bring in the concept of inclusive growth, where all sections of the population must be growing at the same pace. That is why we must be caring for the vulnerable sections of the population with reference to various government schemes and initiatives, such as National Food Security Act, such as various government initiatives pertaining to health sector, such as Ayushman Bharat, and so many other initiatives, right? And also, when we talk about the various tax cuts with reference to the tax policies which the government has been taking place in the last 2-3 years, which is making the life of the middle class much more easier. So in this way, the government can actually factor in the aspects of income distribution. And when we talk about the fiscal rules and policy constraints here, we have to keep in mind that we have something which is known as the FRBM Act. Now, the FRBM Act is actually having the target of limiting fiscal deficit. As of now, we have the target of 3% of GDP. So we have to limit our fiscal deficit to a maximum of 3% of GDP, that is by March 2021. Now we have to understand that 2021 budget extended it to 4.5% by 2025-26 because of the COVID pandemic and the various associated financial measures that the government had to take back then. Also, we have to limit the general government debt and the central government debt, right? So we have to keep in mind that this particular thing, we have to limit it to 60%, where the states should not be having more than 20%, the center must not be having more than 40% here. Also, no additional guarantees with reference to any loans which are taken by the state government should not be given by the central government with reference to excess, or say more than excess of 1.5% of GDP. So in this ways, we can understand these are some rules which has been set, where there are some restrictions with reference to spending limit of the government because of the negative consequences of excessive fiscal deficits, as we have seen just now. And here also, we have some borrowing restrictions with reference to the central government borrowing from the RBI, but later this was relaxed based on the various measures the government has taken to relax the provisions of the FRBM Act. Now here in this one, we have something which we know as the escape clause, which was introduced in 2019. It was actually based on the various recommendations on other committees, even the Encasing Committee, where it was told that in any particular year, right, the government cannot meet fiscal deficits due to various emergencies such as natural calamities, such as various other structural impacts on the economy. So during those times, the government has actually can borrow up to extra of 0.5% of GDP above the target of fiscal deficit, right? After this, we have also provisions of periodical review of these entire provisions by the finance minister, where half yearly review must be done, and also the same must be presented to the parliament, and also the report must be undertaken by CAG. That was a recent a decision which was made from 2012 onwards, that the CAG also needs to take a review of the provisions here. Also, finally, when we talk about the Encasing Committee recommendations here, the fiscal deficit target which he recommended must be 3%. That was, the government of India must be reducing the fiscal deficit by 2020 by 3% of GDP. Going forward, it must be reducing to 2.8% to 2.5% by 2023. But we have seen that in 2021, it was extended to 4.5% of our GDP, right? He also proposed that the minimum annual reduction must be 0.3% of the GDP. So these things we have to keep in mind because we have to write these things in our mains. Also, when we talk about the debt to GDP ratio, he mandated that thing which was implemented, in the FRBM Act, right? He mandated that 60% should be the limit of debt to GDP ratio, where the center must be having 40, state must be having 20%. Next, the revenue deficit target was also reduced to around 0.8% of GDP. That is by 2023, government must be reducing by this. And also, minimum annual reduction was around 0.5% of GDP. But it is to be noted that NK Singh committee recommendations which were given way back in 2016-17, these are yet not implemented in letter and spirit as of now. So we need better amount of fiscal prudence, and we have to understand that fiscal policy is a very important macroeconomical policy, right? That is why the government must be adjusting their spending according to the targets that we have. Otherwise, there will be issues such as crowding out, inflation, and various other impacts. Also, when we have to understand that rigid deficit rules actually impacts our spending, and sometimes we need more expenditure for social expenditure and so on. That is where we have had the escape clause. We have had the amendments such as Budget 2021, where we relax the fiscal deficit target to 4.5%. So it is not that we have to have rigid rules. Sometimes we can be flexible. But as of now, when we talk about the recent budget, and 2021 was a long period of time, 4-5 years have passed right now, so we must be also trying to re-examine the various rules as of now. So this brings us to the end here. This is another mains question for all of you. You can practice it, and also let me know what is the answer of this PYQ in the comments. With this, I'll be moving on to the next one. Now students, the Anthropological Survey of India along with another institution has actually tried to do a survey on the various denotified tribes in the country. This is important for our prelims when we talk about polity and governance and the various rules and the various provisions for the denotified tribes, and also for GS2 when we talk about social justice. When we talk about the denotified tribes, please note that the nomadic tribes, the semi-nomadic tribes are also sometimes associated with them. These are actually those tribes which were under the colonial era acts of Criminal Tribes Acts. So these tribes were considered criminals because of the various viewpoints, the various colonial viewpoints that the Britishers had towards them, right? The acts pertain to various provincial governments that spanned from 1871 to 1947, and these acts were abolished in 1952 because they were highly discriminatory in nature. In India, there are around 10 crore plus Indians which are from around 1400 communities, and when we talk about their distribution in various states, you can see here. And also the Anthropological Survey of India and Tribal Research Institutes have for the first time categorized 268 denotified, semi-nomadic and nomadic tribes that were never even thought of classified before. And we have to understand that these communities will be potentially included in scheduled tribes, scheduled castes and other backward classes lists going forward. And also there are 63 communities as of now which are actually not traceable anymore. That means maybe they have moved away from that village, maybe they have changed their names, they have changed their locations, right? And for the betterment, in 2014, government actually launched the National Commission for Denotified Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Tribes, where the main functions of this particular commission is to have a statewide list of the various communities mentioned here and also suggest for the various measures according to the various initiatives government is taking initially. So right now we also have a scheme known as Scheme for Economic Empowerment of Denotified Tribes, where the government handholds them in giving various government initiatives such as health insurance. Also under the various initiatives of Ayushman Bharat, we are also trying to give competitive exam coaching to the various tribal sections. According to the various other initiatives, we also have the skilling imperatives and the skilling developments the tribes should be having over a period of time. When we talk about these needs here, we have to understand that since this particular criminal acts were repealed, right? So we have had successive commissions who tried to classify these communities. So here the names of the communities are extremely important. So the first backward class committee was headed by Kaka Kalelkar, right? After this we had the Lokur Committee, Mandal Commission, Renke Commission, Idate Commission, which is a recent commission, right? So all of the commissions were trying to classify the tribal sections because the need for the same is that we should not be delaying getting the further government benefits for them, right? And also the communities are suffering from a prolonged say negligence by the government or the state governments with reference to implementation schemes and policies. Also the general sections of societies, they do not look upon them in a good manner. So that is why we must be targeting them, trying to improve their social economic conditions. Also there will be, you know, various aspects of some tribes who belong to some castes, and also some castes who belongs to some tribes. So we have to sort out these differences and, you know, iron out the various administrative inefficiencies we have in classifying these communities. Also we have to understand that it is extremely difficult for us to organize them if we do not have that data. We have to organize them for various political movements, for various social movements, right, for their upliftment, for which we need to have the data. Now when we talk about what is the impact of this particular survey which took place, which is a very welcome news, we have to understand that here all the communities here will be getting the benefits as per the classification of SC, ST, OBC, and most importantly the constitutional benefits that they have, right? So these were something which they were not availing for a long period of time. That is why we have to understand that we can have maybe for them a separate classification in the constitution also, right? So that is why we have to keep in mind that the state governments also should be making, right now when the survey results are out, the state governments should be trying to make their inclusion much more easier. So what is the next step ahead is that the official says that this committee is right now scrutinizing the recommendation and will be soon preparing a final report when we'll be again covering the same in the analyst, right? So right now we'll be moving on to the next one. In the next one, we'll be looking at the ASER report. According to the website, a very interesting thing is that ASER in Hindustani, in their website, they're referring that it means impact, right? ASER in Hindi, we know that it is regarding impact. Now, ASER is regarding that report which will be going into the rural India to look into what is the schooling and what is the basic education levels at our villages. So this is very important from prelims perspective, where we need to look into social development. Also for GS2, when we look into the various issues and development regarding social sector such as education. So firstly, when we talk about this report is not published by the government of India or by any government agency. This is actually the report which is published by the NGO Pratham, and this is a citizen-led survey, and it is one of the largest survey in the country. And this is an annual survey where they conduct a nationwide survey of the children's ability to read, basic things such as ABCD or basic sentences, solve basic sums such as subtraction, division, right, and also solve some digital literacy skills such as opening some applications, or googling some terms, or say various other activities such as setting alarms at smartphones and so on. So that is why we have to keep in mind these are basic skills that children must possess in 21st century. Next, when we talk about the basic ASER survey, this is actually the tracking about the enrollment status, how the children are enrolled at the various schools, right, at the rural areas between the age of 3 to 16 years. Also, the children between 5 to 16 years are also surveyed as to how good or what are the basic reading, arithmetic skills of those students are. So this is a basic ASER survey which is done once in 2 years. So what will be happening in the other year? There will be alternate year model of conducting thematic reports or research. That will be, for example, say looking into the aspects of digital literacy or digital inclusion between the students only. So in this year, the ASER surveyors, they will be only looking into this particular aspect. So once in every 2 years, we have this basic ASER survey. In the next year, we have a thematic survey. Again, in the third year, we have the basic ASER survey. So in 2024, we have around 605 districts across 29 states and UTs, spanning around 18,000 villages, spanning around 15,700 schools, with reference to around 3.5 lakh households, surveying 6.5 lakh students approximately. So in this one, we'll be getting an idea approximately what is the amount of improvement of education in the country in the rural areas. So if we can understand a very important thing that is coming, that there is improvement in the foundational skills or basic numeracy, reading, digital skills between the students in the rural areas. Over a period of time from 2018, 22, 24, we have seen that with reference to even the private schools, the government schools have performed quite well. So this is something which we should be even proud of, that the government schools are performing better than the private schools. So this is also showing that the government schools are implementing the education policies at a much better pace. We'll be knowing the reasons just in the next slide. Also, when we talk about the digital literacy, that is between the age of 14 to 16 years old, the ability to use smartphones is actually much more pronounced between the boys than the girls. So in this one, we are seeing a little bit of digital divide too, but the digital divide is not that big enough. So that is why the government must be filling this particular gap over a period of time. Also, when we talk about the state specific progress, we have seen the usual states such as Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, right? So who are consistently good performers. But we have for the first time inclusion of states such as Uttar Pradesh, Haryana and various other states who are performing quite well according to last year's standards or say previous surveys. This means that the government schools over a period of time in the rural areas are showing good results, apart from even the private schools, correct? So regional progress we can see, government schools have improved their productivity. Also, we have to understand that the pre-pandemic benchmarks with reference to enrollments and digital literacy and numeracy skills, right, were actually a little more higher, but we are reaching up to that level gradually. And here, what has contributed to this positive trend? Everyone is asking this question after this improvement or incredible feat. So according to various researchers, according to various experts, it is due to the National Education Policy 2020. We all know about this policy, right? This is about universalization of education in the preschool to secondary school with the target of achieving 10% improvement of gross enrollment ratio by 2030. Also, we have to understand that it is also looking into improvement of seats in the higher education, also bringing back children into the schools, also no rigid separation between academic streams, extracurricular, vocational education, right? So according to this, we have so many initiatives which were launched or say envisaged as a part of National Education Policy, which was launched in 2020. So down the line in 4 or 5 years, we definitely have seen some improvement we have to understand that recovery has been pronounced in government schools with learning levels in private schools still below pre-pandemic levels. And we have to understand that the National Education Policy focused on the foundational skills. And what is different here for the first time is that we have a systemic national push to improve the foundational skills, reading, maths, digital skills, and almost all the states have shown improvements compared to the last survey. And even low performing states such as UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, they have made remarkable recovery. Also, we have to understand that this improvement should not be the end in itself. We have to strive for better excellence. Still, there are some issues with reference to some teacher supports, so we must be improving that. We must be improving on the focus on middle grades, both education, reforms, and so on. So these are the things we must be taking forward. And here, based on the topic here, I have one question from prelims. You let me know what is the answer in the comments below. And also in mains, we have at questions. You can look at it and also try to write your own answers. You can actually include the value additions, the data we have learned from the ACER 2024. And this is a very important piece of, say, a report for all of you. In the next article, we'll be looking into the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, which is important from prelims, Indian Polity and Governance, and GS2, where we have the various laws constituted for the vulnerable sections of the population. So here we have the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, where the main provision is that there are 37 offenses of atrocities which are sometimes perpetuated by persons against the SC and ST communities. But these offenses are not taken into consideration when it is taking place between the SCs and STs themselves. And also when it is trying to lay down the responsibilities of central government, where the various rules and various aspects of implementation, giving funds to the state government is the responsibility of the center. Implementing the ground level reforms, or say the particular act, is the responsibility of the state government. Where the various offenses are cognizable in nature, you let me know in the comments what do you mean by cognizable offenses. And also here, for any investigation purposes, it cannot be done below the rank of the DSP, whether the report must be generated by 30 days and the report must be given to the director of state police. Here also, according to the provision, it is important to note that special courts must be set up in consultation with the state government and the Chief Justice of that particular state High Court. And here, a particular special public prosecutor should also be designated here, because you have to understand the percentage of cases in UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, they are increasing over a period of time when we talk about the atrocities which are taking against the tribals and the Dalits sections of the population, right? And here, the punishment in these cases can stretch up to 6 months, in special cases even up to 1 year, in further special cases life imprisonment and even death, right? And here fines are also included within the punishment. Apart from this, immediate relief can only be given by the district magistrate, SDM or executive magistrate, in cash or in kind, only with reference to consultation with the victims and the perpetrators of the crime here. And here the main news is that prominent private sector companies, co-founder and 17 others have been booked under the SCST Act in Bengaluru. Also in the Hindu, we have some reports with reference to the Chief Minister making some statement on this particular act and the performance regarding this. So here the Chief Minister is telling that the conviction rate under this particular act has gone down to 7%. That means people are not being convicted. They are being booked but not being convicted because of the various lapses in the police administration. That is why the police departments are instructed to have a thorough review. The Deputy Commissioner should be also reviewing every cases every 3 months. So also efforts must be made to actually whatever the stays order that the courts have been say issued, so those instances can be vacated. Also bail provision must be denied to the perpetrators of atrocities. In many cases, using money, influence, political power, they get bail. And finally, the review must be done with reference to various injustices in the government sector too. So all these highlighted portions can be used by you to write any answers. For example, to write answers regarding PYQs or mains PYQs such as this, that what are the various 2 major legal initiatives by the state since independence addressing discrimination against STs. In the comments, you can let me some more initiatives, and that is where we can include those remarks by the Chief Minister as value addition in these types of answers. Now, recently the SEBI has proposed when listed platform. So we'll be looking into this. Firstly, we'll have to understand what is an initial public offering, then only we can understand this. So basically what happens whenever, for example, I launch a new company named ABC. My company has been doing quite well. It is making high amount of profits. So I thought of why not listing it on stock exchange. So if I want to list it at stock exchange, I have to submit details amount of my balance sheet, profit sheet, employee details and every other things to the SEBI. So when the SEBI will be scrutinizing everything, it will be telling me, okay, you can go and list your company on the stock exchange. Now, for the very first time, when I'm listing my company on the stock exchange, I will be releasing some shares in the market. Maybe I am 100% owner as of now. And after the shares which I will releasing in the market, I will be keeping ownership at 51%, and the rest of the 49% I'll be denoting it in the stock markets. So this 49% shares will be coming into the stock markets for the very first time. So this is actually the process which we know as initial public offering, when any company is listing in the stock market for the very first time. So it is the entire process. And we have to keep in mind there is a particular term here, the gray market in IPOs. See, white market are actually the formal legalized markets such as our stock exchanges, where we can easily buy and sell stocks under proper government regulation. Black market is the total opposite, where we have no government regulation, where to avoid taxes we regulate or say we undertake various activities. In the middle we have gray market. Gray market means that, for example, say there is one investor, for example, I am here, right, and there is some other investor here. So we hear that maybe a company ABC is launching for the very first time in the stock market, and the maybe average number of shares or the price of the shares is 100 rupees. Now I tell that I expect that the particular company or the share will be listed at maybe 10 rupees more. So I say that this particular IPO will be valued at 110 rupees. Now the other person is telling that no, maybe it can be valued at 120 rupees. Maybe the third person can tell that it is valued at 130 rupees. So it is an informal market. We are trying to guess, and we are trying to decide what would be the price of the entire aspect. So when the IPO is listed, when for example say the IPO is listed on the stock market and the shares are allotted, so we have a matter of around 2 to 3 days when the shares are actually deposited in the shareholders account. So in this 2-3 days, right, so the gray market is actually trying to speculate what should be the price, and also not within the 2-3 days, sometimes it can also take this process way before also. So gray market is actually that informal market where the various players, they try to speculate between themselves. But the main problem with this gray market is that this is unregulated, where there can be artificial price manipulation by very big investors, where mainly the small retail investors, they can suffer losses. So due to this particular issues, right, generally what happens as of now, whenever we apply for IPOs, right, before the IPO is actually given to me on my account here, so there we have the speculation in the gray market. So whenever we have higher speculation in the gray market, we generally see that the listing or the price of the share in the stock market is generally having a higher value, or the vice versa can also happen here, right? So that is actually where the SEBI is trying to cut the unregulated trading here. So that is this platform SEBI is working on, that it is trying to reduce the gray market activity by bringing a new facility, right, where this new facility will be coming into operation whenever the IPO is closing. The share will be allotted in T+1 day, that is whenever we have the settlement. So after 1 day you will be getting the share, and the trading will be starting on the when listed platform. So instead of giving it on the normal stock exchange, it will be having another platform within the stock exchange itself, that is a when listed. So within this, till another 2 days, that is T+3 days, you can actually try to trade the shares between yourselves, between the various speculators. And in this way, we will be having a better amount of legal and transparent trading, where the SEBI chairperson has told that if you got your allotment, if you want to sell it, you can sell it in the organized market, such as in this particular when listed facility. So it will be helping you in price discovery. It will be also protecting the retail investors, the small investors, and also will be reducing the market volatility. And also when we talk about the gray market trading, there is also a term for this, that is known as curb trading. So these terms are very, very important for our examination point of view, right? So this is what we have to keep in mind with reference to recent initiative. Now we'll be moving on to the final article. Now recently, according to various maps, as we can see here, there is satellite photograph which is showing a very large scale laser fusion research center in China. As you can see, we have various wings here, right, and a central unit here. This is generally known as the tokamak, where we can contain high dense plasma at extremely high temperatures within a particular range using magnetic confinement or using magnetic waves. So this is a particular technology which China is building on its own. In the very first article, we have seen how China is making strides in the AI sector. Right now in the energy sector, China is not going to stop anywhere. Firstly, we need to look into what is nuclear fusion, what is it all about. We can start with extremely simple idea. It is just the idea as to how we can just combine very basic deuterium and tritium atoms, and whenever we supply extreme amount of heat, we will be getting helium. But apart from helium, we'll be also releasing neutron, and here enormous amount of heat will be associated with it. If we can use this heat, and if we can use this heat to generate steam, so here we can actually try to generate electricity or energy here. But there are various difficulties here. Nuclear fusion is actually the science by which stars are alive. That means at the very core of the stars, we have nuclear fusion going on in continuously. It is actually via nuclear fusion where stars, by the virtue of their gravity, they try to compress mass so compactly that fusion occurs naturally at extremely dense high temperature stretching into millions of degrees of Celsius. So under that high heat, we get fusion, where you also get the byproducts of helium and heat in the stars, and hence we get the unending source of energy in stars. We can also get the same in the earth also, but the present technology does not support containing those particular infrastructure which will be containing that amount of heat, and also will be containing or say converting that heat into energy. So mainly the containing and the storage part is extremely difficult with nuclear fusion as of now. Also, with reference to high cost associated, many countries, many even private sectors are not associated with investing in this particular aspect. Also, when we talk about the plasma instability, right, when we talk about say generating the heat, how it will be generated? It will be generated via generation of high temperature and dense plasma. But due to various leakages and various other issues in plasma confinement, the entire science community is not able to contain it in a particular manner. But we have seen over a period of time, especially China, in 2022, it actually tried to generate energy for 17 minutes at 126 million degree Fahrenheit. So this is how China tried to contain plasma within the chamber, right? It tried to contain the plasma using magnetic field. Using magnetic field will not be letting the plasma escape from the chamber, and hence we can get the heat in this way. So here in this particular development, we can actually see various arms that I have shown you, and also central facility where generally we have a target chamber containing hydrogen isotopes, where powerful lasers will be fusing these particular things together and hence generate heat, right? Also, this is having a similar layout to $3.5 billion facility of the US National Ignition Facility, right, in the say North California. Also, we have to understand November 2020, China already started this way back because of the satellite imagery we have of from back then, correct? So this is how China is making immense efforts. Also in 2016, there was a PYQ on International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, as we can see, right? Now, this is the entire world's initiative to actually realize the dream of having a nuclear reactor, of having a nuclear fusion reactor on the earth, where India is having its own technological developments on supplying the various cryogenic technology, developments of various tokamak technologies such as Aditya U, steady state tokamak, and also the INSPARC demonstration reactor. These are the Indian initiatives where India is also trying to revolutionize its own aspect here, and this is how it is bringing us to the final aspect. So thank you all for being a very patient audience. This was a very long discussion because we have so many important articles to discuss. So I hope you will be following the quiz in the comments, and till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.